A provision in the tax bill approved by the House of Representatives is causing some concern at U.S. colleges and universities. It's the repeal of a section of the current tax code, which exempts graduate students from paying federal income tax on tuition costs waived by their schools. Now, some people claim if enacted into law, the change would possibly prove devastating to graduate research and American competitiveness around the world. And here with more is Dr. Joseph Cordes. He's Associate Director of the Trachtenberg School and Professor of Economics at George Washington University. Dr. Cordes, please explain to us, how does the current law benefit graduate students and our country?
Well, the current law benefits graduate students by essentially not subjecting to tax the portion of their graduate awards that typically either waives or covers tuition expenses. The way many people believe it benefits the country is that obviously this is kind of a form of federal subsidy to graduate education in the United States, which promotes research, development of human capital, because graduate students very often go on to become the next generation of teachers, pastors, and the like. So.
Well, what effect then would the proposed change have on the students and research and American competitiveness?
How it will affect the students will really depend on how the universities and colleges react to the proposed taxation of tuition waivers. Basically, all of the stories that people have seen in the press, I think, assume that, in fact, the graduate students will have to bear the burden of the tax, which is certainly one scenario. And if that were to come to pass, I think what we would see is certainly many fewer graduate students in universities and colleges throughout the U.S. It's possible, and I think it's quite likely, that universities who, after all, compete for graduate students will react to this provision, if it's enacted, by increasing the cash portion of the graduate awards. Now, that's good news for the graduate students because it will lessen the tax burden on them. It's not good news for the universities because it will increase the cost of graduate education, and that will probably lead to some decrease in graduate education throughout the United States. This is such a significant change affecting so many potential students and universities that it's a little too early to sort of figure out what the magnitude of it would be, but I think it would be significant.
Well, I know it isn't in the Senate bill that is under debate right now, is it? I think it was just the House that
That's
made
correct.
that change. So what was the reasoning there from the House of Representatives? You've been following this stuff for many years. Was it well thought out? Doesn't sound like it.
I would have to say the main reasoning, was essentially to come up with what here in D.C. we call pay-fors for the portions of the tax bill that reduce taxes elsewhere. There isn't a particularly strong policy rationale for doing this, since, after all, we've treated this component of graduate support as non-taxable for, at least 50, 60 years, and there's never been any serious discussion of changing that. So I think the main rationale here, pure and simple, was to come up with additional revenue that then could be used to finance tax cuts elsewhere.
President Trump, like Ronald Reagan, has moved early on in his presidency to push for tax reform. How does this effort compare to the tax cuts Ronald Reagan enacted 36 years ago? I'm sure you remember that well.
I not only remember it well, I was privileged to be able to work on the tax reform project in the Reagan Treasury. The answer I'm giving my friends and colleagues these days is I paraphrase Senator Lloyd Bentsen in the following way. I know tax reform. I worked on tax reform. The Trump proposal is not tax reform.
Okay, well, Dr. Joseph Cordes, we thank you for providing your insights today. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Thanks. Pleasure talking with you.